The bees are all out drinking from the puddles. All 3 hives are buzzing all over the place. This entire day has consisted of me being on the brink of a spastic freak out that it feels like spring. We had a day almost this pretty, I don't know, about a month and a half ago, and then I came out and said, lies, it's all lies. This, however, I don't think is lies so much. Now, don't go planning out any sort of tender plants, because this is not entirely true. It's not really, it's not time. However, I feel confident in saying that while this may not be lies, it is kind of a whisper, a promise of what's on its way. Now we do have snow on the forecast next week, so definitely, it's definitely not here yet. So I'm titling this vlog, When Do I Start My Seeds? Because I get this question so much every day, and usually the question is posed something along the lines of, I live XYZ, when do I start my seeds? And the short answer to that is I don't know. I mean, I haven't spent very much time gardening outside of Arkansas, so off the top of my head I cannot tell you exactly when to start your seeds wherever it is that you are. However, I can show you when I start my seeds, and I can give you some tools to figure out when you need to get started. The thing that you need to know first and foremost when it comes down to when to start your seeds is you have to find out your estimated last frost date. And basically what that is, that based on the past and estimates of the average temperatures in your area, there's a day that usually around that time is the last time that area gets a killing frost, which is under 32 degrees. Or 0 if you're Celsius. And that is gonna be, I mean, super simple to find, just a Google search. The Farmer's Almanac website is where I usually look to find the last frost date, and it's about the same every year, and it's just an estimate. So like here in central Arkansas, I'm zone 7B, but I live on a ridge, so the higher elevation kind of gives me a little bit shorter of a season just by a small amount. But usually for me, it's about April 1st is my last frost date. Also April Fool's Day, and it has definitely frosted after that many times. So you don't go entirely off the last frost date. You keep the last frost date in mind, and when it comes down to it and it's getting really close, you start checking that 10-day forecast with some passion. I live by the 10-day forecast during this time of year. I'm just constantly looking at it to know what's coming, what I need to do. So once you have your last frost date, there are various ways to go about it. Sometimes seed packages will tell you sow inside, sow indoors, sow under cover 6 to 8, 10 weeks before your estimated last frost date. That kind of gives you a little bit of an idea, but I wanted to share a resource with you that is very valuable. You know, some of these things you kind of get the hang of, and after you've been doing it for a few years, you kind of have your own day in your mind. Like, I start seeds February 1st through 15th every year. But I still reference this. This is a brand new one, but I've had a Clyde's garden chart for the last few years and have referenced it many times. And actually at HOA this year, I met Clyde. When he came up and introduced himself, I'm like, Clyde, you're Clyde! I was so excited because it was weird, you know, you use a product and you see the name of it and you just don't always connect it with a real person. I guess maybe that's just the age we live in, but I was like, you're Clyde! I was so pumped. And so since then, Clyde and I have talked multiple times, and we decided to co-brand a Clyde's garden chart. And so since this is something that I love and use often, you can now get a copy that says Roots and Refuge here on the top, which is super exciting. And on here, on the back, there's a little area for a saying, and I talked with Clyde, and it says, store-bought vegetables taste like disappointment. Don't be disappointed, grow your own. So this is really cool, and I want to show it to you because it's not just cool that it has that funny saying on it. So basically this is like a sliding chart, and this red here on one side is for spring gardening, on the other side is for fall gardening, and you just slide this along the top to be resting on about your last frost date, which I'm going to set it there about on mine. And then it lines up all of this information, and I can look here, for instance, like potatoes need a minimum outdoor soil temperature for germination of 40 degrees. And then I can go over here and it tells me that this is the first day that I need to be sowing those potatoes outside. So it says March 8th for me. And so this lines it up and takes the guesswork out. And it's got everything here that you would commonly grow in the spring. And then you flip it over here and it's got everything that you would commonly grow in the fall. It's got a lot of information on it as well. Let me take it out and tell you what all it says. The number of seeds to plant per 10-foot row, planting depth, distance between rows or hills, distance between plants after thinning, minimum daily sunshine required. Down here, the approximate produce yield per 10-foot row, and natural companions to plant near each other. So like there's a ton of information that is included in this chart. It's super easy. So today we were actually cleaning out the greenhouse. As you can see, I've moved my salad greens over here. This is where all that junk was that I showed you guys the other day whenever I said the greenhouse needs work. And I found my original Clyde's garden chart, and he's actually added to it over the last few years. And it was a hot mess, and I actually went ahead and tossed that one because now I have my new Roots and Refuge one, which I'm super proud of. I keep one out in the greenhouse and I keep one in with my seeds so that if I need to reference and double check myself, I can do that. I'm going to put a link below to Clyde's website, and if you want one that is specifically Roots and Refuge, you just put Roots and Refuge in the code area. I'll put a link below and put that information down below in the show notes and in the comments so you guys can see that. I guess it's kind of silly how excited stuff like that makes me, but I think it's pretty cool to use a product for years and then meet the maker of the product and then end up with your name on one of the products. I mean, I'm just saying, I think most people would get excited about that. I'm getting out my eggplants and my peppers today, and that's what I'm starting here. I'm going to do another video coming up where I tell you in depth what all I'm starting with. I'm gonna be doing one of these inside, one of them outside, kind of a similar setup to get some stuff started. And I'm obviously starting way more than I actually need because I sell plants at our shindig. We have a plant sale. Now with eggplants and peppers, I used to start them at the same time as my tomatoes, but I've found that they can take a little longer to get established, and this year I would really like to have them a little more established whenever I plant them outside. Just because the last couple years my peppers have been like really scraggly until like a lot later in the summer, and then they pick up if they last that long. And my eggplants haven't done very well at all because we've really battled flea beetles. And so I'm hoping that by having more advanced plants and getting them in, I can have a more successful year. Now, when it comes to figuring out when to start your seeds, you can use something like Clyde's Garden Planner or the information on the back of the seed packs and know how many weeks before your last frost you should start them. However, a couple of questions come up a lot, and so I just wanted to kind of address those so that whenever you start searching for this information, you already have your concerns answered. The first one is people ask, well, if you have to start them at least 6 to 8 weeks before, wouldn't it be better if I started at 12 weeks or 14 weeks? I don't get to plant out until May or June, and so would it be okay for me to start now? Now, for those of you who are living and planting in the frigid north, I really, really do feel for you, especially the feelings that you might be having right now watching me break a sweat in this greenhouse in January. I'm sorry, I know, it really stinks. Don't start your tomatoes right now. Just don't do it. Like, it's tempting. You really, really want to. I know. I feel you. I wish I could just share this warmth with you. But if you start your tomatoes 4 or 5 months before you're allowed to put them out, they are going to be a hot mess by the time they get out. One, You could start things if you planned on continuing to pot them up. If you had the place to give them the warmth and the light that they need, and you continued to put them up in bigger and bigger pots, but in 5 months those plants are going to be setting fruit, and so really they're going to need to be in much bigger pots than anything you're going to start with. You run the risk of things getting really leggy if you start them way too early. It's just not a good idea. Now, like in this instance, I'm starting these eggplants and peppers a little earlier, but not very much. I mean, like, the suggested space for peppers and eggplants is often 8 weeks before your last frost, so I'm not starting them that early. Another common question is, can I just direct sow these things? Like, for instance, eggplants or peppers, tomatoes, the things that are more commonly started inside, can you just direct sow them? And yeah, you can. Starting things inside is just giving you a head start on getting fruit. And for some things, there's a benefit to that. For instance, tomatoes drop their blossoms after 90, 95 degrees. I mean, they really start struggling to set any fruit when it gets that hot. So if I were to direct sow my tomatoes outside, by the time it comes down to them setting fruit, it's gonna be July or August, and it's gonna be well over 95 every day for me. For some people, that might not be the case. However, if you have a really short growing season and you direct sow, you might not have enough time to get much harvest. If you have the space to start things inside, I really do think that it's better. Just because I think it gives you the most for your gardening season to go ahead and be able to put plants in the ground. There are a lot of things that I direct sow. I usually direct sow cucumbers, melons, most root vegetables I've direct sown those. I direct sow a lot of my flowers, like zinnias and calendulas. I've direct sown kale. And every year I end up with tomato and pepper plants that grow from volunteers. So obviously they were direct sown, I just didn't do it. That means in part, it's just gonna come down to personal preference. If you have absolutely no space to start any plants indoors, but you really wanna grow from seed, just go for it. Make sure that you're growing varieties that you have enough time for. Like, find out from your last frost date to your first frost date how many frost-free days you're estimated to have, and make sure that you don't grow anything that's, you know, gonna take longer than that. But I kind of take the stance in anything when it comes to gardening is, if there's not another option, just do it the way that you can. And worst case scenario, it doesn't work and you know not to waste your time the next year. Another thing that people bring up a lot whenever I start talking about sowing seeds. Oh darn. No, okay, here's, I couldn't remember which envelope these came out of. Another thing people will say is, well, I don't have a greenhouse. I don't have a lot of space in my house. Can I still start seeds? And I've talked to a lot of people who have started a pretty significant amount of their plants just using a single heat mat and a grow light in their closet. And in some cases, you don't even need the heat mat. You know, if you're keeping your house 70 degrees, you could just put a grow light in your closet and start your seeds there. Just a little tray of seeds. Most people don't have a massive garden, so one tray of plants under one heat light makes a big difference. So don't count that out. Another question I get a lot of whenever it comes down to like when to start seeds is people will say, oh, I read here that this should only be direct sown, or I read here that this really doesn't like to have its roots disturbed. I think that with gardening, like, any advice like that is good. I mean, we should have our ear to the ground, read, educate ourselves, and take all of those things into consideration. I just asked you guys the other day about growing poppies, and most of you said don't disturb the roots. And because I got such a general consensus of not disturbing the roots, I'm going to direct sow the poppies. However, I've shared this example before. I tried to direct sow nasturtiums for like a few years, and I never got any. They hardly ever grew. I think I had 1 or 2 plants that were really little puny things, and they just never took off. Because I had read, don't transplant nasturtiums. They don't like to be transplanted. Then I went to a plant sale last year, and I noticed that they were selling nasturtium starts, and I thought, well, they're doing it, like, it's obviously working for them and people are buying them. And I thought, well, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. Started some nasturtiums, and last year I had big, beautiful nasturtium plants, which are awesome plants. And I was like, man, I wish I had just tried. I wish I had been willing to try. Okay, I did these rows, and all of these are eggplants. I'm about to just take some soil and cover it up. Okay, I've got the Matoya, the frog egg, Antigua, Rosa Bianca, Edern, and New York Improved. I'm gonna cover these up with soil. As you can see, I've just made a tiny little dent in, and I'm gonna cover them up. Now I'm using these trays from Haas Tools. These are really heavy duty trays. They're made in the US. They're gonna last a long time, and they're sitting in these bottom trays so I can bottom water these. So while they're babies, I can just come in and pour the water on the bottom and keep them good and moist without worrying about displacing them or anything like that. And I actually put this soil in here earlier. This is Pro Mix potting soil, which I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. I went ahead and watered it all and put some water in the bottom. So this is good and damp. All of this soil is. So it's good to go. I don't have to water these right now. They're already got what they need to get started. I do have these sitting on a heat mat, which is also from Haas. Now seeds have different needs as far as like germination temperatures. Some of them will germinate in much lower temperatures, but typically speaking, the things that germinate in lower temperatures that will go ahead in like 40, 50 degrees and germinate, those are cold weather crops. I mean, like root vegetables and brassicas, those will germinate at a lower temperature. Whereas warmer weather crops, they're gonna need more, ideally, like 60 to 70 degree temps in order to germinate. So you can keep that in mind, like if you're starting things in your house versus starting them outside. Because I know that it's gonna be getting kind of coolish next week, I just figured I'd throw the heat mat underneath these to go ahead and give them a head start. I have successfully started in a greenhouse without a heat mat before, but sometimes it takes a lot longer. I did a live video from the greenhouse a few weeks ago, and I was sharing how I'd found out by looking at my state's laws that there was a law about selling plant starts without a nursery license, and basically what it stated was that if you were going to do that, it had to be in a soilless mix. And I was like, oh man, I've only ever really started stuff in potting soil before, and I thought, am I doing this illegally? I don't want to do it illegally. I want to make sure that I'm following the law. We actually checked into it. My friend Ben Benson from VW Family Farms actually contacted someone that he knew and asked them what that meant. And they basically just said that you can't sell plants that you started in soil from your yard, that it needs to be in like bagged soil from the store. And so my plan to use the potting soil that I always use is still okay. But I had at that point already got some of this Pro Mix from Haas Tools when I got this other stuff. And I really like it. It's really, really good stuff. It's organic, it's super light, but I'll probably end up using both now. Alright, so I'm actually going to move out of the greenhouse for the next little bit and work on some tasks out here because it is really warm in there, and I've already taken off multiple layers of clothes, so I'm gonna work out here for a little bit. I've actually got one very exciting task for today. Now this garden bed, I think you can see right here in the front, there's a little nubby kale plant. I have several plants that were chewed down to nothing by deer, and they're coming back, and I have quite a few kale plants down on the other end that were just seeds when that hard frost came in at the middle of the winter, so they're growing up. And I've got this all-star kale mix from Hudson Valley Seed Company. This was one that was very recommended by Ken, who runs Hudson Valley. I've also got these Sheboygan turnips, Sheboygan? I don't know, which I got from In My Gardener, and these round black Spanish radishes from Baker Creek. And I'm going to be sowing all of these into this bed. It's not going to fill up the bed. I'm still going to have quite a bit of space left, but this soil has already been amended with some compost, and we're also going to add some aged alpaca manure into it once I'm done digging around in it. Once I get everything planted, we'll come in and spread some alpaca manure. Alpaca manure is cold. It doesn't actually have to be aged, but I've got some stuff that's been piled up for a couple of months, and we're gonna use that first. Now this bed, that bed, and these two are actually gonna have our row covers on them. We got those from Grower Solutions. I cannot remember what we bought or how much they cost. Maya is actually at Home Depot right now purchasing the rest of the stuff to set up those row covers. And so he will probably be doing a video to show you guys about that, hopefully tomorrow. We're supposed to have another beautiful day tomorrow. I've got multiple little places where there's like weeds coming up and things that have reseeded from last year. There's another kale growing back. Here's lots of random kale. So I'm gonna do as much order as I can with how random this kale is through it, but I'm not gonna take that out because it's already planted and started and I wanna eat it, so I'm gonna leave it there. Ben turns over here, dumping out the green stalks into this bed. Nice job, Ben turn. You can tell how much he loves being on the camera. We actually, I decided to go ahead and put fresh soil in my green stalks this year, and so I'm putting this over here because it'll be easy to kind of add some fertilizer and stuff to it. And you guys told me that poppies love freshly disturbed soil, and you said that now is the time to plant poppies, and so I'm actually going to put poppies there on that side space because the soil will be freshly disturbed, and now's the time. I also wanted to show you guys just real quick my brassicas. As you can see, some of them are a little leggy. I'm actually getting a fan. I asked Maya to pick me up an oscillating fan while he was at the store to put out here in the greenhouse because I just wanted to get the air moving so that all of my seedlings don't get leggy this year. I think I started those about a month ago. Let's see, no, it was Jeremiah's birthday, so it was December 28th. So yeah, it was about a month ago that I put those in. So they're doing really well, and I'm still going to direct sow like the kale out there, even though I have kale in here, because I mean, I use a lot of kale, and my thought is, I'm not gonna have too much, it'll be okay. Also, maybe I'm just excited about this beautiful spring day and I just want to plant some seeds and I forgot to start these. Maybe that's it. All right guys, I'm gonna get to work and put this camera down, but thank you for hanging out with me today. God bless you guys. Until next time.